The wagon wheels kicked up dust as they rolled past Adelaide Everett, and she knew without looking back that no one would turn around to help her. She stood at the edge of Steins Pass, New Mexico, with nothing but the clothes on her back and a small canvas sack containing a single loaf of bread, a canteen of water, and the worn Bible that had belonged to her mother. The July heat of 1883 pressed down on her like a physical weight, and the desert stretched before her in endless waves of sand and scrub brush. Behind her, the town elders had made their pronouncement clear. She was unmarried, alone, and accused of bringing shame to their community by refusing the advances of Councilman Porter's son. When she had fought back against his unwanted attentions, leaving scratches on his face, they had believed his lies instead of her truth. Now she was being cast out into the wilderness with nothing, expected to die or disappear, whichever came first. Adelaide took her first steps into the barren landscape, her worn boots already filling with sand. She had 23 years of life behind her, and she wondered grimly how many hours she had ahead. The sun was merciless, and she knew that by nightfall the temperature would drop dangerously low. She had no bedroll, no weapon, no horse. Just her determination, and a stubborn will that had gotten her into this mess in the first place. Her father had died 2 years ago in a mining accident, and her mother had followed 6 months later from grief and consumption. Adelaide had been working as a seamstress, barely making enough to rent a small room above the general store. She had been vulnerable, and men like Thomas Porter knew how to spot vulnerability. She walked for hours, rationing the water carefully, though her throat screamed for more. The landscape was harsh but not entirely lifeless. Sagebrush dotted the terrain, and occasionally she spotted a lizard darting between rocks. In the distance, mountains rose purple and imposing against the sky. She had no destination, only the driving need to put distance between herself and Steins Pass. Perhaps she could reach another town, though she knew the next settlement was at least 30 miles away. Without a horse or supplies, it might as well have been 300. As the sun began its descent, painting the desert in shades of orange and red, Adelaide heard something that made her freeze. Hoofbeats. Someone was following her. Terror gripped her heart. Had they sent someone to finish what they had started? To make sure she did not survive to tell anyone the truth about what had happened. She turned slowly, shading her eyes against the setting sun, and saw a single rider approaching at a steady pace. The man sat tall in the saddle, his wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the glare. He wore the practical clothing of a working cowboy, dusty denim and leather, with a bandana tied around his neck. As he drew closer, Adelaide could make out more details. He was young, probably not much older than she was, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly beneath his hat. His face was lean and angular, marked by days spent outdoors, and his eyes were a startling blue-green that seemed to see right through her defensive posture. "Miss Everett," he called out when he was close enough to be heard without shouting. His voice was deep and carried a gentle quality that surprised her. "Please, stop walking." "Who are you?" Adelaide demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Did they send you to make sure I do not come back?" The cowboy brought his horse to a halt a respectful distance away and slowly dismounted. "Name's Wyatt Hayes. I work the cattle ranch about 5 miles west of town. And no, nobody sent me. I saw what happened this morning. I heard the lies that boy told, and I saw them force you out with nothing." His jaw tightened with barely suppressed anger. It was not right. It was not justice. "Then why are you here?" Adelaide asked, though something in his voice made her want to trust him. She had learned the hard way that trust was dangerous. "Because I followed your trail," Wyatt said simply. He pulled his canteen from his saddle and held it out to her. "And because I came to say, come back with me. Not to town, but to the ranch. My boss, Mr. Sullivan, he is a fair man. We need someone who can cook and mend for the hands. The work is hard, but you would be safe, fed, and paid honest wages." Adelaide stared at him, afraid to believe what she was hearing. "Why would you do this? You do not know me." Wyatt's eyes met hers, and she saw something genuine there, something that made her chest tighten. "My sister was cast out of a town in Kansas 3 years ago. Different reasons, but same injustice. She did not make it to the next settlement. I swore then that if I ever saw something like that happening again, I would not stand by and do nothing. So I am here, Miss Everett. I am asking you to come back with me to the ranch. No obligations, no expectations, just honest work and a safe place to sleep." The sincerity in his voice nearly broke through her careful walls. Adelaide wanted desperately to believe him, but fear held her back. "How do I know this is not some trick? How do I know you are not like Thomas Porter?" Wyatt flinched at the comparison, and she saw real hurt flash across his face. "You do not know. I understand that, but consider your alternatives. You can keep walking into the desert with one loaf of bread and a half-empty canteen, or you can take a chance that maybe, just maybe, there are still some decent people in this world." He gestured to his horse. "Either way, take some water and these supplies." He pulled a bedroll and a package of dried beef from his saddlebag. "I will not force you to come with me, but I am asking, please let me help." Adelaide's throat was so dry it hurt, and her legs were shaking from exhaustion. The logical part of her brain screamed that she had no real choice. She would die in the desert if she continued alone. But another part, the part that had been crushed and betrayed by her community, whispered that death might be better than more betrayal. She looked at Wyatt Hayes again, really looked at him. His posture was open, non-threatening. His hands were steady as he held out the supplies, and his eyes held something she had not seen in a long time. "Hope. If I come with you," she said slowly, "and if your Mr. Sullivan does not want to hire me, will you bring me to the next town? Give me a chance somewhere else." "I give you my word," Wyatt said immediately. "On my sister's memory, I give you my word." That vow, spoken with such raw honesty, finally broke through her defenses. Adelaide nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Wyatt's face flooded with relief, and he quickly helped her onto his horse before swinging up behind her. She stiffened at the proximity, but he kept a respectful distance as much as the saddle allowed, and his hands on the reins were steady and sure. "The ranch is about 2 hours' ride from here," Wyatt explained as they started moving. "We will get there after dark, but there is a good moon tonight. Mr. Sullivan and his wife are good people. They have 3 daughters, so Mrs. Sullivan will be glad to have another woman around. The ranch hands are decent too. Most of them are young guys like me, working hard to save up for their own land someday." As they rode, Adelaide felt herself beginning to relax slightly. The horse's steady gait was soothing, and Wyatt kept up a gentle stream of conversation that did not require much response from her. He told her about the ranch, about the cattle they raised, about the landscape and the wildlife. He pointed out the mountains in the distance, explaining which passes were safe and which were treacherous. His voice washed over her, and she realized he was deliberately trying to put her at ease, to show her through his words and actions that she was safe. "Can I ask you something?" Adelaide finally spoke, her voice raspy from thirst despite the water he had given her. "Anything," Wyatt replied. "Why did you really follow me? There must have been a dozen people in that town who saw what happened, but you were the only one who did anything about it." Wyatt was silent for a long moment, and Adelaide felt his body tense behind her. "Because I know what it feels like to be powerless," he said quietly. I was 17 when my sister Hannah was run out of town. I tried to fight for her, but I was just a kid and I had no money, no influence. I watched her walk away, and I promised myself I would never be that powerless again. I have spent the last 5 years working every job I could find, saving money, learning skills, making myself into someone who could make a difference. When I saw what they were doing to you this morning, I saw Hannah, and I knew I finally had the chance to keep the promise I made. Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. I am sorry about your sister. Thank you, Wyatt said simply. She was a good person who deserved better, just like you. They rode in comfortable silence for a while, the desert slowly transforming in the fading light. Adelaide found herself noticing small details. The way Wyatt's hands were calloused from hard work but gentle on the reins. The way he sat in the saddle with easy confidence. The faint smell of leather and sage that clung to him. She had been so focused on survival that she had not allowed herself to think of him as a person. But now she could not help it. He was helping her with no expectation of reward, driven by a promise to a sister he had lost. There was something deeply honorable about that, something that made her chest ache with an emotion she could not quite name. The ranch buildings came into view as the last light faded from the sky. It was larger than Adelaide had expected, with a main house, a bunkhouse, a barn, and several outbuildings. Lanterns glowed warmly in windows, and she could hear the low sound of cattle settling for the night. Wyatt rode straight to the main house and dismounted, then helped Adelaide down. Her legs nearly buckled after hours in the saddle, and his hands steadied her automatically. "Wait here," he said gently. "Let me talk to Mr. Sullivan first." Adelaide nodded, suddenly nervous. What if this Mr. Sullivan refused to help? What if he believed the same lies that the town council had believed? Wyatt seemed to sense her anxiety because he squeezed her hand briefly before heading up the porch steps and knocking on the door. A middle-aged man answered, tall and broad-shouldered with graying hair and a weathered face that spoke of years in the sun. "Wyatt, what brings you here this time of night? I thought you had tomorrow off." "I need to speak with you, sir," Wyatt said respectfully. "It is important." Mr. Sullivan's eyes shifted past Wyatt and landed on Adelaide, his expression sharpened with concern. "Bring her inside," he said immediately. "She looks about to drop." Wyatt waved Adelaide forward, and she climbed the steps on shaking legs. Inside, the house was warm and smelled of bread and coffee. A woman appeared from the back, wiping her hands on an apron. She had kind eyes and dark hair streaked with silver, and she took one look at Adelaide before rushing forward. "Good heavens, child, you look half dead. Come sit down, Mrs." Sullivan guided Adelaide to a chair at the kitchen table. "Patrick, get her some water." "Wyatt, what is going on?" Wyatt explained the situation quickly and clearly, not embellishing but not softening the truth either. He told them about Thomas Porter's lies, about the council's decision to cast Adelaide out, about finding her walking alone in the desert. As he spoke, Adelaide watched the Sullivans' faces shift from concern to anger to determination. "Those sanctimonious fools," Mr. Sullivan growled when Wyatt finished. "Casting out a young woman alone like that, it is barbaric." "Can she stay here, sir?" Wyatt asked. "Can we give her a job?" "I know we have been saying we need someone to help with the cooking and mending, and Miss Everett is a trained seamstress." Mrs. Sullivan had already made up her mind. Adelaide could see it in her eyes. "Of course she can stay. We will put her in the spare room off the kitchen. It is small but private and comfortable. And Wyatt is right, we desperately need help around here. Can you cook, dear?" "Yes, madam," Adelaide managed, her voice thick with emotion. "And I can sew, mend, clean, whatever you need." "Then it is settled," Mr. Sullivan declared. "You work for us now, Miss Everett. Fair wages, room and board, and my word that you will be treated with respect. Any man on this ranch who causes you trouble answers to me." "Understood," Adelaide nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. After everything that had happened, after being cast out and abandoned, these strangers were offering her sanctuary without hesitation. Mrs. Sullivan bustled around getting her food, and Mr. Sullivan went to prepare the spare room. Wyatt stood near the door, his hat in his hands, watching her with those intense blue-green eyes. "Thank you," Adelaide finally whispered to him. "You saved my life." Wyatt's expression softened. "You would have found a way. You are stronger than you know. I just helped even the odds a bit." Over the following weeks, Adelaide settled into life on the ranch. The work was hard, just as Wyatt had warned, but it was honest and satisfying. She cooked meals for the ranch hands, mended their clothes, and helped Mrs. Sullivan with the endless tasks that came with running a household. The ranch hands were respectful, even protective of her, especially after word spread about what had happened in Stein's Pass. They treated her like a little sister, joking with her but never crossing any lines. Wyatt was different. He did not treat her like a sister. He treated her like something precious, something worth protecting and respecting. He was never forward or inappropriate, but Adelaide felt his eyes on her often. When she was kneading bread, when she was hanging laundry, when she was sewing by lamplight in the evening. She found herself watching for him too, her heart lifting when she heard his voice or saw him riding in from the range. They began taking walks together in the evenings after the work was done. Wyatt would show her the land, pointing out the different plants and animals, teaching her how to read the signs of weather in the sky. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Adelaide learned that Wyatt had grown up in Texas, that his parents had died when he was young, that he and Hannah had survived on their own until she was cast out. He wanted to own his own ranch someday, to build something lasting and good. Adelaide told him about her parents, about how much she missed them, about her dream of opening her own dress shop someday. She confessed her fear that she would never be able to trust anyone fully again after what Thomas Porter had done. Wyatt listened to everything with complete attention, never judging, never minimizing her experiences. "Trust is not something you give all at once," he said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "It is something you build, piece by piece, with someone who proves they are worth it. I would like to be that person for you, Adelaide, if you will let me." Adelaide's heart hammered in her chest. She knew what he was saying, could see the vulnerability in his eyes as he waited for her response. "I would like that too," she said softly. "You already are." Wyatt's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds, brilliant and warm. He reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. They sat like that until the stars came out, connected by that simple touch, feeling the trust between them solidify into something stronger. As summer turned to fall, their relationship deepened. Wyatt courted her properly, with the full knowledge and approval of the Sullivans. He brought her wildflowers from the range, helped her with the heavier chores, sat with her in the evenings reading aloud from books he borrowed from the small collection in the bunkhouse. He was patient, never pushing for more than Adelaide was ready to give, but making his feelings abundantly clear. Adelaide found herself falling in love with him in ways she had never imagined possible. It was not just his kindness or his handsome face, though both of those things certainly affected her. It was the way he made her laugh, the way he listened when she talked about her dreams, the way he respected her boundaries while making it clear he wanted more. It was the way he looked at her, like she was the most important person in his world. One evening in October, as they walked along the fence line watching the cattle graze in the golden light, Wyatt stopped and turned to face her. "Adelaide, I need to tell you something." Her heart stuttered at the serious tone in his voice. "What is it?" "I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you since the day I found you in the desert, so stubborn and brave even when you were terrified. I love the way you hum when you cook, the way you scrunch up your nose when you are concentrating on sewing, the way you laugh at my terrible jokes. I love everything about you, and I need you to know that." Adelaide felt tears spill down her cheeks, but they were happy tears this time. "I love you too, Wyatt, so much it scares me sometimes." "Do not be scared," Wyatt said, reaching up to cup her face gently, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving you can trust me with your heart, if you will let me." "I will let you," Adelaide whispered. "I already have." Wyatt leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle and sweet, full of promise and hope. Adelaide's arms came up around his neck, and she kissed him back with all the love and trust she had been building over these months. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Wyatt rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "Not right away, I know you need time. But someday, when you are ready, marry me. Let me spend my life making you happy." "Yes," Adelaide said without hesitation. "Yes, Wyatt, I will marry you." They set a date for the following spring, wanting to have time to plan and save money. Wyatt worked harder than ever, taking on extra jobs to build up their nest egg. Adelaide sewed a wedding dress in stolen moments, creating something beautiful from fabric Mrs. Sullivan helped her purchase in the nearest large town. The whole ranch buzzed with excitement as the wedding date approached, but life had one more trial for them before they could have their happiness. In February, word reached the ranch that Thomas Porter had been arrested for assaulting another young woman in Steins Pass. This time, there had been witnesses who came forward, and his father's influence had not been enough to protect him. The marshal wanted Adelaide to come testify to add her story to the charges. Adelaide was terrified. The thought of facing the people who had cast her out, of reliving that trauma, made her physically ill. But Wyatt held her hand and promised to be by her side every step of the way. "You do not have to do this," he told her. "But if you want justice, if you want to make sure he cannot hurt anyone else, I will be right there with you." Adelaide decided to testify. It was one of the hardest things she had ever done, standing in that courtroom and telling her story while the townspeople who had condemned her listened in shocked silence. But Wyatt was there, just as he had promised, his presence giving her strength. The Sullivans came too, and several of the ranch hands, showing the entire town that Adelaide had people who believed in her and supported her. Thomas Porter was found guilty and sentenced to 10 years in prison. His father, shamed and disgraced, resigned from the town council. Several of the elders who had cast Adelaide out came to her afterwards and apologized, though their words felt hollow after everything they had put her through. Adelaide accepted their apologies with grace, but made it clear she would not be returning to Steins Pass. Her life was at the ranch now, with people who had proven their loyalty and love. The trial had been difficult, but it also gave Adelaide a sense of closure she had not realized she needed. She had faced her accusers and her trauma, and she had emerged victorious. More importantly, Wyatt had been exactly where he promised he would be, standing beside her, supporting her without trying to take over or speak for her. It was the final proof she needed that she could trust him completely with her heart and her future. Their wedding in late April was a beautiful affair. Mrs. Sullivan and her daughters decorated the ranch with wildflowers, and the local minister came out to perform the ceremony. All the ranch hands attended, along with the Sullivan family and several neighboring ranchers who had become friends. Adelaide wore her handmade dress, and Wyatt wore his best suit, his eyes shining with love and pride as he watched her walk toward him. They exchanged vows under the wide New Mexico sky, promising to love and support each other through whatever life brought. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Wyatt kissed Adelaide with such tenderness that several people in the crowd wiped away tears. The celebration afterwards lasted into the night, with music and dancing and more food than anyone could eat. Mr. Sullivan pulled Wyatt aside at one point during the evening. "I want you to know something, son. I have been planning to divide up some of the ranch land for my daughters when they marry, but I do not have any sons. You have been like a son to me these past years, and I would like to give you and Adelaide 200 acres on the western boundary. It is good land with water access. You can build your own place there, start your own herd. Consider it a wedding gift and a thank you for all your hard work." Wyatt was speechless, overwhelmed by the generosity. "Sir, I do not know what to say. That is too much." "It is not nearly enough for what you have given this family," Mr. Sullivan said firmly. "You brought Adelaide to us, and she has become like another daughter. You work harder than any man I have ever employed. You have earned this, Wyatt. Take it with my blessing." When Wyatt told Adelaide about the gift, she burst into tears of joy. They had been planning to save for years before they could afford their own land, and now they had it, a place to build their dreams. They spent their first year of marriage living in a small cabin Wyatt built on their land with help from the ranch hands. It was simple but comfortable, and Adelaide made it into a warm, welcoming home. Life settled into a happy rhythm. Wyatt worked their cattle and helped out at the Sullivan Ranch, building their herds slowly and carefully. Adelaide continued to sow, taking on commissions from neighboring ranches and even some orders from the growing town of Deeming, about 30 miles north. Her reputation as a skilled seamstress spread, and soon she had more work than she could handle. In the summer of 1885, Adelaide realized she was pregnant. She told Wyatt one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, the same way they had on so many evenings since they met. Wyatt's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He whooped with joy, picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down carefully and started fussing over whether she should be sitting or lying down or drinking more water. "Wyatt," Adelaide laughed, "I am fine. Women have been having babies since the beginning of time. I am not made of glass. You are carrying our child," Wyatt said, his voice thick with emotion. "You are the most precious thing in my world, and now there is going to be another precious thing. Let me worry a little." Their son was born the following March, a healthy baby boy with Wyatt's blue-green eyes and Adelaide's dark hair. They named him Henry, after Adelaide's father. Wyatt was a devoted father, helping with every aspect of caring for the baby despite the teasing from the ranch hands about being soft. He did not care what anyone said. He had grown up without parents, and he was determined to be present for his children in every way possible. Adelaide fell even more deeply in love with her husband as she watched him with their son. Wyatt would spend hours talking to Henry, telling him about the ranch, the cattle, the land they were building together. He made toys with his own hands, carved wooden animals and little wagons. When Henry was old enough, Wyatt would carry him around the ranch, pointing out everything and explaining how it all worked. 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter they named Grace, and 2 years after that, another son they named Samuel. Their little cabin became too small, so Wyatt built them a proper house, with 4 bedrooms and a large kitchen for Adelaide. The Sullivan family remained close, and their children grew up playing together. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan became grandparents to Adelaide and Wyatt's children in all but blood. The ranch prospered over the years. Wyatt's careful management and Adelaide's business sense made them successful beyond what either had dreamed possible. They were able to buy more land, expand their herd, and even hire a few hands of their own. But success never changed who they were at their core. They remained humble, generous, and deeply committed to each other and their family. Adelaide never forgot where she had come from, the terror of being cast out with nothing, the miracle of Wyatt following her trail and offering her a lifeline. She made a point of helping others when she could, hiring women who needed work, offering refuge to those fleeing difficult situations. She and Wyatt opened their home to several young people over the years, giving them the same chance they had been given. Wyatt never stopped seeing Adelaide as the brave woman he had found in the desert. Even after years of marriage, he would still look at her with that same mixture of love and admiration that had marked their early days. He brought her wildflowers from the range, helped with the children and household chores without being asked, and made sure she knew every single day how much he loved her. On their 10th anniversary, Wyatt took Adelaide back to the place where he had found her in the desert. They rode out on horseback, leaving the children with Mrs. Sullivan for the night. It was early evening, the same time of day it had been when he had followed her trail all those years ago. "You ever wonder what would have happened if I had not followed you?" Wyatt asked as they stood looking out at the vast landscape. "Every day," Adelaide admitted. "I would have died out here, Wyatt. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved." "You saved mine too," Wyatt said, pulling her close. "I was just existing before you, working hard but not really living. You gave me purpose, Adelaide. You gave me love and a family and a reason to build something lasting. Everything good in my life came from the day I decided to follow your trail and ask you to come back with me." "Best decision you ever made," Adelaide teased, but her eyes were wet with tears. "Best decision we both made," Wyatt corrected, kissing her forehead. "You decided to trust me, to take a chance on me. That took more courage than anything I did." They stood together as the sun set, the same sun that had beaten down on Adelaide as she walked alone into the wilderness a decade ago. But everything was different now. She was not alone. She would never be alone again. She had Wyatt, their children, their ranch, their life together. She had built something beautiful from the ashes of her worst moment, and she knew without a doubt that she was exactly where she was meant to be. As the years continued to pass, Adelaide and Wyatt watched their children grow. Henry became a skilled rancher like his father, with a natural way with cattle and horses. Grace inherited her mother's skill with a needle and her father's business sense, and she dreamed of opening her own dress shop someday. Samuel was the family scholar, constantly reading everything he could get his hands on, dreaming of becoming a teacher. Wyatt made sure all three children knew the story of how he and Adelaide met, though they told it in age-appropriate ways as the children grew. It was important to both of them that their children understood the values of courage, integrity, and standing up for what was right. They taught their children to question injustice, to help those who could not help themselves, and to choose love and compassion over fear and prejudice. The ranch continued to thrive, becoming one of the most respected operations in southern New Mexico. Wyatt's reputation for fair dealing and honest work spread throughout the territory, and Adelaide's sewing business grew to include a small shop in Deeming where she employed 3 other seamstresses. They were successful by any measure, but they never let success go to their heads. They remained grounded in the values that had brought them together, committed to making their corner of the world a little bit better. When Henry turned 21, Wyatt officially made him a partner in the ranch. It was a proud moment for the whole family, watching the next generation step up to help carry on what Wyatt and Adelaide had built. Grace opened her dress shop in Deeming when she was 19, with Adelaide as her business partner and mentor. Samuel won a scholarship to a teaching college in Santa Fe, the first person in either family to pursue higher education. Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan lived to see all of these milestones, proud as any grandparents could be. When Mr. Sullivan passed away peacefully in 1898, Wyatt was one of the pallbearers, and he wept openly at the funeral of the man who had given him his first real chance in life. Mrs. Sullivan continued to live on the main ranch, surrounded by family, until she passed 5 years later. Through all of life's joys and sorrows, Adelaide and Wyatt remained each other's anchor. They had built their relationship on a foundation of trust earned through action, not just words, and that foundation never wavered. They weathered droughts and hard winters, sick cattle and economic downturns, all by facing each challenge together. On their 25th anniversary, their children threw them a huge celebration. Friends and neighbors came from miles around to honor the couple who had become pillars of their community. There were speeches and toasts, stories and laughter, but the best moment came at the end of the night when it was just Adelaide and Wyatt, sitting on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. 25 years, Adelaide mused, leaning against Wyatt's shoulder. It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once. Best 25 years of my life, Wyatt said, kissing the top of her head, though I hope we have at least 25 more ahead of us. At least, Adelaide agreed. She looked out at their land, at the house they had built, at the life they had created together. Do you remember what you said to me that day in the desert, when you asked me to come back with you? I remember every word I have ever said to you, Wyatt replied. But which part do you mean? You said I would find a way, that I was stronger than I knew. You were right, Wyatt, but I was only strong because you gave me a reason to be. You showed me that there were still good people in the world, people worth trusting and believing in. You gave me hope when I had none left. We gave each other hope, Wyatt said. We saved each other, Adelaide. That is what love is supposed to do. They sat in comfortable silence, hands intertwined, watching the stars come out one by one. The night was peaceful, filled with the familiar sounds of the ranch settling down for the evening. In the distance, they could hear Henry calling instructions to one of the hands. From the house came the faint sound of Grace practicing piano, a skill she had taught herself from an old instruction book. Samuel's light burned in his window as he prepared lessons for his students. Adelaide thought about the terrified young woman who had walked into the desert with nothing but a loaf of bread and a half-empty canteen. She thought about the cowboy who had followed her trail and offered her a lifeline. She thought about all the moments between then and now, the challenges they had faced, the joys they had celebrated, the life they had built together from nothing. I love you, she said to Wyatt, the same words she said to him every day but never tired of saying. More than I can ever express. I love you too, Wyatt replied, pulling her closer. For the rest of my days and beyond. As they sat together under the vast New Mexico sky, Adelaide felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. She had been cast out into the wilderness, left to die by people who should have protected her. But from that darkest moment had come the greatest blessing of her life. Wyatt had followed her trail, had seen her worth when others saw only shame, had offered her not just survival but a future worth living. And she had been brave enough, strong enough, to accept that offer and build something beautiful from it. Their love story was not the easiest or the most conventional, but it was theirs, forged in the harsh desert landscape and strengthened by every challenge they had faced together. It was a love built on respect, trust, and unwavering commitment. It was a love that had created a family, a home, a legacy that would continue long after they were gone. As the years continued to roll by, Adelaide and Wyatt settled into the comfortable rhythm of a long and happy marriage. They became grandparents when Henry married a sweet young woman from Deeming and had 2 daughters. Grace eventually married a banker who supported her business ambitions, and they had 1 son. Samuel married a fellow teacher, and they had twin girls who inherited their father's love of learning. Wyatt and Adelaide loved being grandparents, spoiling their grandchildren in ways they had never quite been able to spoil their own children when they were still building the ranch. Their home became the center of family gatherings, filled with noise and laughter and the chaos of multiple generations coming together. Adelaide taught her granddaughters to sew, passing on skills that had saved her life and built her independence. Wyatt taught his grandsons and granddaughters alike to ride, to work cattle, to respect the land and animals in their care. On quiet evenings, when it was just the 2 of them again, they would still take walks along the fence lines, still sit on the porch watching the sunset, still hold hands like newlyweds. Their bodies were older, marked by decades of hard work and desert sun, but the love between them had only grown stronger with time. "You have any regrets?" Adelaide asked Wyatt one evening when they were both in their 60s. It was a question she had never asked before, suddenly curious after all these years. Wyatt considered for a long moment, his weathered hand holding hers. "Only one," he finally said. "I regret that I could not save my sister Hannah the way I saved you. I wish I had been older, stronger, braver back then. If I had been, maybe she would have lived to see all of this, to know that I kept my promise to her." Adelaide squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. "She knows, Wyatt. Wherever she is, she knows. You honored her memory every day of your life. You became the man you are because you loved her and lost her. That has to count for something." "I hope so," Wyatt said softly. "What about you? Any regrets?" "Not a single one," Adelaide said firmly. "Every hard moment, every struggle, every fear led me to you and to this life. I would not change a thing." They lived to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary, a milestone few couples reached in that time and place. Their children organized another big celebration, and this time there were grandchildren running everywhere, along with friends and neighbors from across the county. Adelaide wore a new dress she had sewn herself, still skilled with a needle even at 73. Wyatt wore his best suit, still handsome despite the silver in his hair and the lines on his face. During the celebration, their oldest grandson asked Wyatt to tell the story of how he and Adelaide met. It was a story all the grandchildren loved, a real-life adventure with danger and romance and a happy ending. Wyatt looked at Adelaide, and she nodded encouragingly. "Well," Wyatt began, his voice still strong despite his age, "it all started on a hot July day in 1883. I was working at the Sullivan Ranch, and I heard about an injustice happening in town. A young woman was being cast out into the wilderness with nothing, accused of something she did not do. I could have looked away. Most people did. But I thought about my sister Hannah, and I knew I had to do something." He told the story with the skill of someone who had told it many times, but it never lost its power. The grandchildren listened with wide eyes as he described following Adelaide's trail into the desert, catching up to her as the sun was setting, asking her to come back with him to the ranch. "And the bravest thing," Wyatt said, looking at Adelaide with the same love and admiration he had always shown her, "was that she said yes. She had every reason not to trust me, not to trust anyone, but she took a chance. She was brave enough to accept help, strong enough to build a new life from nothing. That is the real story. Not that I saved her, but that we saved each other." Adelaide's eyes filled with tears as Wyatt finished the story. After 50 years, his words could still move her, still make her fall in love with him all over again. Their grandchildren applauded, and several of them had tears in their eyes too. "Tell us the best part, Grandpa," one of the younger grandchildren called out. "Tell us about when you said you loved her," Wyatt laughed. "That is a story for when you are older, little one, but I will tell you this. From the moment I met your grandmother, I knew she was special, and every single day since then has proven me right. She is the strongest, bravest, kindest person I have ever known. Loving her has been the greatest privilege of my life." The celebration continued late into the night, filled with music and dancing, and the kind of joy that comes from being surrounded by people you love. As Adelaide watched her children and grandchildren celebrating, as she felt Wyatt's arm around her waist, she felt a completeness she had never imagined possible on that terrible day when she was cast out. She had been alone, frightened, and facing certain death. But a cowboy had followed her trail and said, "Come back with me." And in doing so, he had given her not just survival but a beautiful, full, rich life beyond anything she could have dreamed. They had built an empire from nothing, raised wonderful children, created a legacy of love and integrity that would live on through their descendants. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Adelaide and Wyatt stood at the door thanking everyone for coming. When the last guest had gone and their children had taken the grandchildren home, they were finally alone. They walked slowly to their bedroom, both tired but happy. 50 years, Adelaide said as they got ready for bed. "Can you believe it has been 50 years?" "Some days yes, some days no," Wyatt admitted. "But I would live every one of them again exactly the same way, as long as you were there beside me." They lay down together in the bed they had shared for decades, and Adelaide nestled against Wyatt's side, her head on his shoulder. This was her favorite place in the world, right here in her husband's arms, feeling safe and loved and cherished. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Wyatt asked, though she knew he probably knew. "For following my trail. For not giving up on me. For showing me what real love looks like. For giving me this life." "Thank you for saying yes," Wyatt replied, kissing her forehead. "For being brave enough to trust me. For building this life with me. For loving me even when I did not deserve it." "You always deserved it," Adelaide said firmly. "You have been the best husband, the best father, the best partner anyone could ask for. I am the luckiest woman in the world." "I am the lucky one," Wyatt argued gently, and Adelaide could hear the smile in his voice. "I got to spend my life with you." They drifted off to sleep together, just as they had done thousands of times before, secure in the knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged. Adelaide's last thought before sleep claimed her was one of profound gratitude. She had been cast out into the wilderness, left to die by people who should have protected her. But a cowboy had followed her trail and offered her salvation. And she had been brave enough to accept it, to build a new life from the ashes of her old one, to trust in love when she had every reason not to. Their story became a family legend, passed down through generations. The ranch they built remained in the family, operated by their descendants who never forgot the courage and determination that had founded it. Adelaide's dress shop in Deeming operated for 3 generations, always employing women who needed a second chance. The values Wyatt and Adelaide had lived by continued to guide their family long after they were gone. As they grew older still, Adelaide and Wyatt slowed down but never stopped working entirely. They were both in their 70s when Wyatt finally admitted he needed to turn over the day-to-day operations of the ranch entirely to Henry. Adelaide had already passed her business on to Grace several years earlier. They spent their last years doing exactly what they loved most, being together, surrounded by family, watching the sunsets from their porch, and remembering all the beautiful moments that had made up their life together. When Wyatt passed away peacefully in his sleep at age 78, with Adelaide holding his hand, she felt like a part of her soul had been torn away. They had been together for 53 years, more than half a century of love and partnership. The grief was enormous, overwhelming, but so was the gratitude. She had been given a gift most people never received, a love that lasted a lifetime, a partnership that never wavered, a man who had proven every single day that he meant his vows. Adelaide lived for 2 more years after Wyatt's death, long enough to see all of her grandchildren married and to meet several great-grandchildren. She remained sharp and engaged until the very end, still sewing, still telling stories, still dispensing wisdom to anyone who asked. But everyone who knew her could see that she missed Wyatt terribly, that part of her had gone with him when he died. She passed away quietly one spring morning, sitting in her favorite chair on the porch, a half-finished piece of embroidery in her lap. Her children found her there, peaceful and still, with a small smile on her face. On the table beside her was an old, worn photograph from their wedding day, Wyatt looking strong and proud, Adelaide radiant with happiness. They buried her next to Wyatt, on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together, under the vast New Mexico sky that had witnessed their love story from beginning to end. At her funeral, their oldest grandson read a letter Adelaide had written to be shared after her death. In it, she thanked her children and grandchildren for all the joy they had brought her. She expressed her pride in the people they had become and the lives they had built. And she told the story one last time of being cast out into the wilderness, of the cowboy who followed her trail and said, "Come back with me," of the love that had grown from that moment of courage and compassion. "I was lost," she had written, "and Wyatt found me. I was broken, and he helped me heal. I was alone, and he gave me a family. I was afraid, and he showed me courage. Everything good in my life came from the day I decided to trust him, to say yes to his offer, to believe that maybe not all people were cruel. I hope you all find that kind of love in your lives. I hope you all find someone who will follow your trail when you are lost, who will offer you a hand when you are falling, who will stand beside you through every storm. And if you are lucky enough to find that love, hold on to it with everything you have. Fight for it. Cherish it. Let it make you better than you ever thought you could be. That is what Wyatt did for me, and that is the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. Now I am going to join him, and we will watch over all of you together. Live well. Love deeply. Be brave. Those are the lessons your grandfather taught me, and they are the legacy we leave to you." The letter was read through tears, but also through smiles, because Adelaide's joy and gratitude shone through every word. She had lived a remarkable life, transformed tragedy into triumph, and left behind a legacy of love that would echo through generations. Years later, when descendants would visit the graves on the hill, they would stand there looking out at the ranch spread below, at the land Wyatt and Adelaide had built from nothing, and they would remember the story. They would remember that love and courage could triumph over injustice and cruelty. They would remember that one person's compassion could change everything. They would remember that a young woman cast out into the wilderness, and a cowboy who followed her trail, had created something beautiful and lasting and true. And on quiet evenings when the wind blew across the New Mexico desert, some swore they could feel the presence of Wyatt and Adelaide still there, still together, still watching over the land and family they had loved so much. Their story had ended, but their legacy lived on in every person who chose courage over fear, compassion over cruelty, love over hate. That was the real happy ending, not just that they had found each other, but that their love had rippled outward, touching and changing everyone it encountered, creating waves of goodness that would never fully fade. The ranch still stands today, operated by the sixth generation of their family, and Adelaide's name lives on in the small historical museum in Deeming that features her original dress shop and some of her finest work. But more than any physical legacy, it is their story that endures, a testament to the power of one person's decision to help someone in need, and another person's courage to accept that help and build something beautiful from it. In the end, that is what love really is. Two people choosing each other over and over again, through every challenge and every joy until death finally parts them, and even then, only for a little while.